Obviously, there's biological differences between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
Do you think this makes a difference in motorsport, in mixed racing?
That's physical side. Mental side, I do think there's a difference male and female.
How so?
You're taking away that equality. You're actually saying by having an all-female championship that you can't race with men.
And they said, but you're the leading female, so you would win. I said, I don't want to. I don't want to beat the females. I want to beat the grid. I hope that they're supporting these females realistically in what happens after F1 Academy. And you're at Donington Park in the rain and you're eating sausage, chips and beans in the cafe. Oh, hello, it's Jade Edwards here. I thought we could discuss the comments you've been making all day. And I honestly, through the phone, heard his stomach fall straight out of his arse.
So Jade, welcome to Backseat Drivers. Now a backseat driver officially, finally. So where do we start? Racing career. Have you always been in racing?
Yes.
From a kid?
Third generation. So
Okay.
I actually went to a racetrack when I was 2 weeks old. So my granddad was on a day out with his friends, stumbled across Brands Hatch. There was like an advert saying like racing on today, dived in with his mates, had a day's racing. And I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, he'd stripped the carpets out of his car because obviously back in those days, you just raced whatever you've got. And he was on track. So he started it all just on a day out with his friends. And then he raced with names like Fittipaldi, James Hunt, all before they obviously went off to F1. So he started off single seaters and then switched to like touring car-esque cars back then. Dad was born. Dad went straight into racing, did Renault 5 turbos, won the championship the year I was born. So hence the 2 weeks old and I was at racetracks. Fairly interesting story, actually. I think I was born sort of near a race weekend. So Dad was preparing for it. And my mum went into labour, went to hospital. Dad rocked up, watched the birth, was like, good one, Anne.
Watch the birth.
Watch the birth. That was
Cinema
it.
ticket.
Yeah, exactly. Checked in, front row seat, watched it, said, well done, Anne, good effort. And then left to get ready for racing or whatever.
What?
And I think my mum drove herself home with me in the back, which
No way.
yeah, which now would just not be allowed. But obviously back then, you know, she jumped in the car, newborn baby. I mean, I was the second child, so I was probably just chucked in the back somewhere, like done it all before. And 2 weeks later, my dad was racing in the Renault 5 turbos, and I was there as a newborn. So I've literally been at racetracks since I was tiny baby. He then did Clios, touring cars, and hence where my story then came in terms of what I wanted to race and where I was aiming for. But I do have a sister as well, 18 months older, and we both raced as young as we could. But when we were karting age, my dad was still racing, so we never really did anything like karting. We just went straight into Ginetta Junior. So yeah, it was from the day we were born, we were at racetracks and watching motorsport.
Were you very competitive with your older sister?
So competitive, like
Stupid
viciously
question,
almost.
but-
Yeah. So she was 18 months older, but it's also the lifestyle and the environment I was brought up in that I was never handed anything on a plate, even at that age. 18 months younger, you know, your limbs aren't as long, you're not as strong, but I was never given, like if we were doing running races in the garden or anything like that, I was never given head start or, you know, whoever won. And if you didn't, you had to fight to change it, attack my sister on the route or whatever it was. And we're fiercely competitive, especially when we've ever raced together. But I think that's only a positive, you know, that's probably driven us on to be better and more focused. And yeah, we never got given anything, never handouts. So yeah, we're still competitive now. We actually work in Formula One together and we've become sort of best friends, but there's always that competitive element between us every single day, depending on what it is. I remember even going to, did you ever get like new school shoes and you go and get like size fitted for school shoes and stuff when you were younger?
Yeah.
We even had a competition of like who's got the biggest feet, like, oh, mine are big, and like, why? Who cares? But as kids, like everything for us was like competitive, and I wanted to be bigger shoes or swam faster in our swimming lessons or whatever it was. Everything was competitive, which was pros and cons at times, I can imagine.
So that's obviously great, having a sibling that you can be competitive with and have the same interest. But one thing that stands out to me there, and we had a conversation upstairs, like, you know, you don't come from loads of money and it wasn't easy to get into racing and continue racing. even me, and I had this conversation with my dad when I was younger. I was like, oh, I wish I had a brother, because I've got two much older, 6 and 9 years older sisters. Obviously never into racing. My whole family were never into cars or anything. But even from, and I've been very open about it, I'm from a very privileged background.
Yeah.
But even with that, if I did have a brother that also wanted to race, kiss goodbye to it, because I wouldn't be able to. So how did you manage that, having double the amount of money, because you both wanted to do driving? How did you manage that as a family?
So in terms of, getting across how much money we didn't have, we grew up in, council houses, and real, I wouldn't say, I had a great childhood. I had great memories, but we never had international holidays. We never had extravagant days out. We really didn't have much money. And my parents worked hard, and we then bettered our lives in terms of where we lived and what cars we had and stuff like that. But again, we didn't have much extra money to do anything. But we had this dream to go racing. So my dad and obviously my mum did what they can to provide for us. So we had a go-kart that we shared. We had sort of race kit that we shared, because obviously if you share a go-kart, you don't need two sets of kit because you're not both in it at the same time. So it was like crash helmets. We wanted to get the best quality crash helmet, but that's obviously a lot more money than the off-the-shelf random one. So you buy one that's really, really good, and we shared it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. And then Ginetta Juniors was the first car racing we did. And my dad helped fund my sister's first season. But I say my dad and my mum and grandparents and family all together. But they had to do stupid things to fund it,
It's not cheap.
It's not cheap. And even back then, it's all relative. So even if it was cheaper then, obviously cost of living and stuff was different. So it's all relative. And they had to do things like, remortgaging houses and stuff like that. And they realised it's just not sustainable. So they gave us one season each in Ginetta Juniors as best they could. Didn't do all the races, had a car that was sort of loaned from Ginetta and, that kind of stuff. And then after that, they said, we will do what we can, but we can't just prop you up. We can't, both of you, one of you is too expensive, let alone two of you. So then it was kind of down to myself and Chloe to go and find the bulk of the money, the sponsorship. And that's kind of where things separated in terms of our stories of where we got to where we are, because my personality was much more able to approach people. If you said to me that person over there will sponsor you, but all you've got to do is go up to them and speak to them or have a meeting, I'm straight up there. Whereas my sister was a little bit more reserved, a bit more shy. And although she was very good as a driver, and together we were, really close in times and racing and whatever it was, she didn't have that drive or ability and personality to just go out and speak to whoever. And I still remember parents wanting us to get a job. I hated normal jobs. I still don't have a proper job now, you could say. And I used to hide job application forms. And, I didn't want to go and sit in an office or sit in a shop. So I was always ducking and diving. And I remember seeing a Clio team, and I drove in and I just sat with a team manager and said, how can I race a Clio? How can I get there? And that was probably 10 years before I even raced a Clio, So I had that personality where I went out and found it. She didn't. So she did a little bit less racing than I did. But essentially parents couldn't pay for it. You know what it's like. They can do 10%. They can top up what you've got, but they can't, bankroll the whole thing. So it was learning a business lesson from a very early age.
How did you find it socially with other drivers going into sports? So knowing your background now, growing up in a council house, that not many drivers actually have that. The grand scheme of most racing drivers have incredibly wealthy families.
Yeah.
Even ones that can't make it.
Yeah.
And complain about budget and we don't have enough money. Even they're middle class, upper middle class.
Yeah.
It's not, when people say that in our podcast as well, they get some hate in the comments because it's like, oh, you must have some money because you did this. It's like, they're not saying they're poor or they're, completely working class, council house, whatever. They simply can't afford these hundreds of thousands of pounds to go ahead. But sorry,
I was going to say, how did you find that socially going in? Because your other drivers become your peers, right?
Yeah.
So, being able to relate, fit in. I struggled with that when I first got into it.
Yeah, I think it's all about upbringing. I had an upbringing where not having a lot of money was normal for us, and it was very open. And if you go into a shop as a kid and you say, "Mum, can I have this?" It was a very open, "No, not today, maybe another day." And it was very normal to be of that financial level. And I want to get across that it wasn't a poverty childhood. It was just a very basic, standard, normal school, normal upbringing. But then we're entered into a sport that is obviously very money orientated and, sort of elitist in that sense. So when we came into Ginetta Juniors or karting, there's always that difference between us. And I think personality-wise, it made no difference. In Ginetta Juniors, you're just sort of kids. Maybe parents to parents, there was a difference, but not that I ever knew of. I think it became different on track because you see drivers throwing tyres at it, test days. That's where the frustration came for us, is that we couldn't afford that side of it. But in terms of personality, driver to driver, I never felt like I was inferior in that sense. It was just I was on a different category in terms of we didn't turn up with a nice motorhome and, we sort of camped in, cheap hotels or trucks or wherever we could find. But my parents did what they could and made that very normal and very realistic. And it wasn't we had less. It was just this is where we're at now and we strive to be better, which we have. And we've got a very nice lifestyle now and enjoy our lifestyle. But yeah, we came from tough times, but it was never a negative. I never grew up thinking it was a negative. It was always just, this is us, and we push. If we want more, we work harder.
I think do you think that's instilled in you, this drive, coming from that background? Because we recently filmed a podcast with John Pratt, and he said his biggest problem is working with people. Most of the people he works with are from a high net worth family, and everything comes very easy to them, even if they're not completely spoilt. They haven't had to work super hard to go on nice holidays, have nice things, race cars, whatever
Safety
it is.
net.
Yeah. So do you think that kind of all or nothing mentality comes from that background?
100%. Because I thought about this the other day, a picture of the Ginetta, when you have each season, you have a picture of the grid, the drivers of that season. And I look back at Ginetta Juniors when my sister did it and when I did it. And 90% of the drivers in that picture that probably finished ahead of me in races or, went on to do a little bit better are now nowhere to be seen. Because essentially when it got tough for them, for whatever reason, they couldn't sustain the industry in terms of either financial, the pressure, whatever it was. And it's probably the same for you guys. If you look back at the drivers you've raced against, drivers that have maybe beaten you or were deemed the next best thing, probably, and again, nowhere to be seen because some think they got to a hurdle that they didn't want to jump over. Whereas for me, I was always, regardless of what was happening on track, I think if you just put one foot in front of the other, stubbornly, you're gonna get somewhere. And highlight the names. Tom Ingram, he was much similar upbringing to me. Jake Hill, similar upbringing, didn't really have financial backing, but all we kept doing was just relentlessly trying. And those two are obviously doing brilliantly, both touring car champions. I never thought I'd ever get to touring cars, regardless of results on track. Being there for 3 seasons flat out was my reward in itself. And that comes from having nothing. So to get something, you have to work for it because nothing was handed to me. And I think that is the case for drivers that have been born into wealth, no fault of their own, but because they've had help along the way, suddenly when it's down to them, they don't really know where to start. And that's probably the tricky bit.
What was your sponsorship strategy? Because we have lots of drivers on that say, I worked really hard for it, but a lot of kids watch, or just anyone that wants to get into racing, and they go, well, I've sent this email to this person and I never got a response. So how much work, how much effort, and what was your strategy to get people to give you money to go racing?
So it's been a lifelong stress. My entire career has just been working for the odd penny, the odd pound. But I think the differences were when I went club racing, and I spoke about this earlier upstairs, is that I quickly realised that for club racing, when there's no TV or a lack of live stream or whatever it is, people are less likely to just give you money because they have to find that in the company to address to you, give to you. So I quickly switched and went from not money, product. So I started off, say, in the Mazda MX-5 Championship, what tyres do they use? So then you go to a local tyre company in your local town, and instead of asking them to give you money, can they give you tyre allocation? Can they provide you tyres that you use? Same with brakes, everything you need on a race weekend. Instead of giving me something to my bank account, just let me rock up with the van and take a few sets of whatever it is I need for that race weekend for a sticker on the car, because they can allocate parts differently to they can allocate money. It's also not contacting Coca-Cola and, Mars Bar or wherever it is, because we're such small fry. To them, it's not worth the 10 grand that we need, because it doesn't mean anything to them. So go local. I had a sponsorship from a local sports bar, that it was all down the side of my car. I actually worked in the sports bar itself at the time. And then it meant they sort of showed my races on one of their TVs on the race weekends. And did they get much from it? No, but they're sort of investing in the person and the event and the fact that I've bowled up and I've presented this idea to them, and they go, well, it doesn't instead of advertising on leaflets, we're now advertising on a race car. It's thinking outside the box in that sense. Then as you get higher, the amounts get bigger. Instead of looking for 10 grand, you're looking for 100 grand. And again, can one company give you 100 grand? Unlikely. How many companies out there can just give someone that amount of money? So then I thought, small amounts, lots of companies. And I created this Jade Edwards 9 for 9, which was basically 9 companies, and you pay over 9 weekends, and you pay £1,000 a weekend. So most companies can eliminate £1,000 a month between sort of March and whenever. And my car, that's how I got into Clear Cup in 2017. And it gave me 81 grand or whatever it was, and the budget was probably just over 100, but it meant I can pay for my entry fee, I can pay for the basic running costs, and then as the year went on, I could then find a bit more that topped up. So I never had full budget, but my car looked like a complete patchwork quilt. There was logos everywhere. I had people left, right and centre, because each company wanted 2 or 3 tickets, and there's obviously 9 companies and all this sort of stuff, and it was bloody hard work. But it meant that people invested in the 9 for 9 scheme. It was investing in me, going, this girl's got no money, she comes from no money, but I can play a small part in getting her on the grid for a small part in investment. It doesn't cost them a huge amount of money. And I did that for 3 seasons, and it became a brand in itself, and the logo was everywhere. And I'd have companies sort of contact me and go, I want to be part of this. And I quickly realised that a lot of sponsors don't necessarily sponsor the championship or sponsor the car, they sponsor the person. So you have to become a personality, a product in yourself. And that's why I was always interacting with the fans. I was on social media. If anyone wanted my time, I tried to give it to them, because then, regardless of what results happened on track, they still had a great weekend, because I'm hosting people. They all had a laugh. It was a good weekend, and they wanted to come back next time. So it was working out that actually personality sort of overruled results on track, or the car you're racing, or the weekend you're on, that kind of stuff. So it was hard to realise that, because a lot of drivers go, I've won this and I've done that and it's on this TV show. But actually, give them a good day out, get them to meet people, have a laugh, bit of B2B business, and actually that's what they're investing in.
So was there a balance between working on your driving to sponsor? What was the ratio on driving to managing sponsorship?
Badly, because I was seeking such little amounts from so many people, my time was completely taken up. Even when I got to touring cars, a lot of the budget was supplied by the team I was with, and ever grateful to them, but the budgets were still big. So I still had to provide hundreds of thousands of pounds. And so that meant a lot of people were turning up on a Sunday ready for race day, which meant when I woke up in the morning, my first thought wasn't driver's briefing or data, or, I remember my pedal didn't feel that right. That I got to tell my number one. It wasn't that. It was, have I got enough passes? Are they in? Who's ringing me? Oh, I've got no signal. How will they get hold of me? No one sees that,
That's
you know?
tough.
Yeah, exactly. And don't get me wrong, I had people around me, my mum, other sponsors that were more like friends, they would always help. But essentially it stopped at my door, and when someone couldn't get in because the security were being hard work or doing their job, they rang me, and so I'm at the highest level of British motorsport, and I'm at the gate or stressing about my sponsors that can't get in, or, you know, haven't got the gluten-free menu at the hospitality. Do you see what I mean? It's your brain's elsewhere all the time.
It's so unlike any other sport, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how many other sports and the athlete has to manage all of that?
Yeah, exactly.
Usually you'd think you get to, say, the top tier of, like, the top of BTCC is the sort of best thing you can do in the UK.
Yeah.
Most competitive championship with manufacturers involved. But in tennis or football, whatever, as soon as you get to a half decent level, all of a sudden managers want to come on with you, and they're funded by, you know, third parties, not by you, and you don't have to worry about anything. And it's just about picking the best manager. But like you said, racing is just, you are your own manager for so long.
For me, I've never had any manager, because I can't afford them. Most of the time they want a retainer or something, or they want a commission. And I didn't have enough sponsorship to afford to give someone a commission out of the sponsorship, even though they've earned it, because they might find me the sponsorship. You know, I couldn't afford to give them the 20% because I was on such a tight budget. So everything anyone's ever seen of me over my career, social media, sponsorship deals, car liveries, anything like that, that's all been me doing it. And for example, when I got into touring cars, I did that one-off round in 2020 in the Astra, and the team owner, Adam Weaver, I went and did the deal with him myself. And I think he said to me, "You're the first driver in my entire career working in touring cars that's come to me on their own, without a father, a parent, a manager, and that's done the deal just you and me." And he said, "I've never seen that." And there's me in the workshop figuring out where my logos can go. And there was quite a funny story where I needed to do a certain amount of laps, certain amount of kilometres in the car before you're allowed to race a touring car. You have to do 350k or something. So we had to do a test day. And I'm on this tight budget, and the test day was somewhere between 4 and 5 grand. We were sort of to and fro-ing of what the cost was. And he said, "Well, you know, it's sort of rounded up to 5. And I'm like, "Well, if you're rounding it up to 5, I could probably round it down to 4. And he like smiled at me. And we're stood in the workshop, race cars all around us. And I said, "Why don't we just toss a coin?" I said, "And if I win, it's 4 grand. And if you win, it's 5 grand. And his face like lit up, because to him, and I don't want to say that he's obviously absolutely loaded and minted, but to him, £1,000 one way or the other is not going to break the deal, if that makes sense. But to me, being able to put £1,000 into something else would have been a big deal for that weekend. So we stood in this workshop, got a coin out, got one of his mechanics to come over. We chose head or tails, flipped it, and it landed on my side, and I got the deal for 4 grand instead of 5. And to this day, we still love that moment, because that's how I work. Duck and dive, be cheeky, ask for it if it's always going to be a no, but sometimes it might be a yes. And that's how I've always had to work, is like, you ask the questions, and sometimes it'll become a yes and you've got the deal you need and away you go. But I love that moment where he allowed that kind of free, fun moment of tossing a coin to discard, you know, do a deal as to whether I do a test day or not. You know, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and obviously you successfully did this to get sponsorship to such a level where you entered British Touring Cars. Can you explain what the British Touring Car Championship is?
It is. So it's the highest level of British motorsport. It's obviously more like street cars, but on proper tracks. It is door-to-door racing. People would claim it to be a crash fest, but those of you that are at the top level will know that, yes, there can be contact made, but it's obviously done in a certain way. The contact at the front of the grid is very different to the contact like at the back of the grid, but it's probably the closest, most exciting racing to watch. There's many other touring car championships around the world. V8 Supercars is obviously brilliant. That's another one I'd say that is amazing. But second to that, British Touring Cars is watched all around the world for a certain reason, and that is because it's so close, so competitive, and quite often 4 or 5 drivers can win the championship at the final round, which is, I think, what fans love to see, is that it is dog eat dog, you know, competitive, close racing, and all live on TV as well. So you can see everything play out on television every 2 weeks, which is, it's intense, but it is probably the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah. And I asked this question because Louise brought it up in our podcast with her.
Yeah.
And I think it helps my sister a lot, being my manager, also being a family unit. But they both say that obviously being a woman in the sport, in such a male-dominated industry, was daunting in some ways and had its disadvantages and its dodgy comments and whatever. But sometimes in negotiations, like my sister with managing, or Louise Goodman with getting the odd interview or the odd gig here and there and being a bit cheeky with the guys, actually was a benefit, it was an advantage being a woman? What was your experience?
So I've never grown up feeling like I'm a minority in this industry. I think, again, that's my upbringing. My family never made me feel like I was different. There's been experiences along the way that have highlighted it, but not through my upbringing. And I think you're right. There's certain scenarios where I wouldn't say it's easier being a woman to maybe find sponsorship, but it's different. You can contact different companies, you can approach it differently. I think men in some respects love when a female's doing a deal. They respect that. They like it when they're assertive and they know what they want and they're they're a go-getter. But it also is negative in some ways. Some people don't respect you straight away, or they kind of don't believe you have the knowledge that you need, or you're business minded. It is a balance, but I do think the likes of Louise Goodman, myself, other female drivers of my era have this mindset where we are in a male industry, and yes, we want some equality, but equally we'll just go out and get what we want however we need to get it. We'll be assertive, we know what we want, we're driven, and you don't take on board the naive comments or the silly comments that are made because they don't mean anything to you. Then they're irrelevant because we're trying to get to that point ahead of us, and the way to do it is to be strong, assertive, powerful women, and I think if you believe in yourself, that kind of drives you forward, and you don't need to listen to the noise around you.
I think sitting down with you, Abby and Louise and Chloe Grant as well, you're all very similar in that sense. You're very powerful, very confident in what you do. What advice for our 1% female listeners?
It might be less than that.
Yeah, less than 1%. We've got like half a woman watching this. Yeah. What advice would you give, let's say, to a young girl now? Maybe it's a bit easier for them now with the likes of Formula One Academy and stuff like that. What advice would you give to them who's maybe a bit more on the nervous side, trying to break into this male-dominated still industry? Yeah,
I think I go back to that group of us that is that era before any of this sort of female initiative stuff started. And the reason we kind of got to where we did was because we didn't lean on the fact we were females. I've always said being a female is my unique selling point, but it's not my excuse. Do you see what I mean? So I utilize it where I can. If I win something and I'm the first female to do it, as much as I don't like using that headline, in terms of media, marketing, publicity, that's a good thing to utilize. But when I'm a driver and my crash helmet's on, or I'm speaking on ITV as an opinion, as a pundit, I'm not a female giving that, knowledge, or female driver. I'm just a driver. And I think we were raised, or I was definitely raised, not feeling like I'm a female in a male world. I was just a driver. And females coming in, there's all these females and initiatives happening, which is brilliant because it's drawing females in karting and giving them confidence. But we can't lean back on it and use it as our excuse and go, well, you have to give me this opportunity because I'm a girl. No. You get it because you're deserving of it, and you're the right person for that drive or the job. But it does showcase that if you do a good job well, it opens doors for other females, and it showcases on a platform that, we are more than welcome. Because if I've coached with you guys on days with McLaren or other events, we're no different. You don't look at me and go, oh God, she's here coaching. I don't look at them and go, I don't think I'm good enough. We all turn up as coach. We all have our way of doing it. I believe in my ability. I can teach that person something maybe different than you can, benefits and, different ways. But I've got confidence in myself. I don't lean back on like, oh, I'm here because I'm the token female. I believe that I'm there because I can do a job that they need on that day, if that makes sense. So any females that are young, you need to have internal confidence in yourself that drives you on, and not lean on this whole, I want to get a job because I'm a female, I want to get a drive because I'm a female. You get it because you earn it, and that's the difference.
So were you skeptical when these initiatives first launched, like W Series, F1 Academy, etc. at first?
Yeah, so I was approached by W Series to try and join a couple of times, to which I didn't move forward. I was in touring cars at the time, so I wasn't in a position to let go of that to move over to to W Series. I've also never raced a single seater. So in terms of career move, I didn't think it would have been good anyway to, even if it was British F4 normal championship come and join with us, I probably wouldn't, because I don't think at that point it would have been good to switch from GTs and touring cars into single seaters. But what I didn't like is, for me, separation is still not equal. I like the fact that in my racing career, all I've ever done is race on, and I don't even want to say a male grid. It's just a racing grid. It's just a motorsport grid. And however many females are there or males, it was irrelevant to me. That was just the championship I did. And I remember when I raced Mazda MX-5s, they presented this idea to me where they wanted to create a female championship within the championship. And I said, absolutely not. I said, you can do it, but I don't want to be part of it. And they said, but you're the leading female, so you would win. I said, I don't want to. I don't want to beat the females. I want to beat the grid. And the same with British touring cars is I would have rather have been there, mid to the back of the grid, but earning my stripes in the mainstream way than at the front of an all-female grid. Because I think, for me, as soon as a female won the all-female championship, my first thought, even as a woman, was, but how would they fare in British F4 or, the other, regional championships and in single seaters? Having said that, now that it's switched to F1 Academy and there's obviously F1 teams involved and big brands, and I get the initiative of what they're doing, and they're doing it well. They're putting females on a big platform so that the young females in karting or watching on the TV, on Netflix, can see that females can do it. Do I agree with the segregation? Not necessarily. But do I agree with the program as a whole as to what the end goal is? Yes, I do. And don't get me wrong, F1 Academy and W Series gave a lot of my friends drives that they hadn't had for a long time and new opportunities. But it is the segregation that I've always felt a little bit strange about. And as long as the intention is female driver athletes and not female driver PR marketing stunts, then as long as the intention is pure, then I get it.
My opinion has shifted on it since we filmed my Interrupty podcast with Abby. But I'm on the fence with at the time it was W Series that Abby was doing. Now it's Formula One Academy. Like you said, I completely understand partly why it's there. It's giving it's giving women and young girls a role model also to look up to, something to watch that's on a support race for Formula One weekends, the Netflix series. These girls that go into this championship suddenly go from having 3,000 followers to 30,000 or 100,000. I mean, look at people like Bianca Bustamante with 1.9 million followers or whatever she's got. And I completely understand that it's starting to normalize female drivers within motorsport, and I get that journey. But it was the same question that I had for Abby, which was, you're taking away that equality. You're actually saying by having an all-female championship that you can't race with men. That was part of my psyche. I was like, well, if you can, which I genuinely believe there's some really talented women out there, they need to be, in my opinion, racing against the best of the best, whether that's a man or a woman, to get the best out of themselves. Because what I feared might happen is girls will come out of F1 Academy having won that or W Series and hop into GB3, F3, whatever it is. I mean, look at Chadwick. She won 2 or 3 championships in W Series. Yes, got lots of money and that's great and lots of PR, and has now gone on to do IndyCar. But in this pursuit of trying to get a woman in Formula One, we're not getting much closer, I don't think, yet.
I guess their aim is that they're not looking at the drivers on the grid now. They weren't looking at the ones that were on it 2 or 3 years ago. They're aiming for the girls that will be in it in 5 to 10 years' time. And that's what I get. Because if you think putting those females on this F1 platform, if you see it, you can do it. That's what they're trying to do. I totally agree with you. I would have preferred, and I don't know if many people remember this, but when I was growing up, there was a program called the Racing Steps Foundation, where they took a selection of drivers and they funded them properly into mainstream motorsport. So if it was me and you know, I was running this, or it was my idea, I would love to see a female touring car driver, a female rally driver, single seater, whatever else categories there are, GT driver, take one from each category or two and fund them into their respective ladder of racing, and fund them properly so that they're competing within the mainstream motorsport, and then see where we're at. Switch that up. Another option would be change F1 Academy, so each team has to run 2 cars. One has to be a female and one has to be a male.
I thought this.
Same age, same age category, so no older than, 24 or something. You can only do 2 seasons, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But instead of a grid of 20 females, make it a grid of 25 or 30 cars, and half a male, half a female. So you're giving young men that are maybe lacking funding but have good talent the same opportunities as young females that are lacking funding but have good talent as well. So we can feed both sides of the industry. Because my story, or my sort of influence that I want to give, is when I was racing in touring cars, I'd have young girls come up to me, starry-eyed, looking at me going, I didn't know girls could race. But I also want young lads to come up to me or see me racing in a men's sport, and I use inverted commas, if they want to do netball or ballet or sewing or fashion or whatever that's deemed a female industry, I want them to go, well, that girl's doing a man's sport. That gives me the confidence to chase my female industry passion. Do you see what I mean? It needs to work both ways. And I want to be an inspiration for young females and young males as well. So that's how I would do it, is I would bring in both genders and fund the underfunded drivers in both categories.
I completely agree. It's something I've thought about for a while, because I think it was Chloe that said, guys have had so much for so long, and representation is a serious thing.
Yeah.
But the equal opportunity, if you take in the F1 Academy, for example, the very best drivers from whether it's male and female, the best future F1 stars, and it's a bit more clear, it's clearer then, and it's fair. But I was going to ask you, do you see with this current landscape of F1 Academy, which is such a huge opportunity for these girls, do you see maybe people in karting or parents get their girls in maybe fast track racing to get to that series now?
Yeah, so I think one of the examples is, like Ginetta Juniors now, the females that were coming into that, they, instead of wanting to go into a bigger Ginetta championship or GTs or whatever it is, they now sort of go from Ginetta Juniors aiming for F1 Academy. And, that's okay, I believe, as long as, again, the intention of that championship is pure, and that is to bring on females as pure racing athletes and not PR marketing stunts. Because you put them in F1 Academy at, 16, 17, 18 years old, when they've not done much prior to that.
On a big stage.
Yeah, they're suddenly in the F1 media pen. They're doing TV stuff. They're being flown to Miami, and they're doing, features on the beach and going to the football stadiums and all this lifestyle that is absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Then, take Abby Pullen, for example, who's grown up in British motorsport with no real funding, so she'll get it. But when you win it, you then go to GB3, and you're at Donington Park in the rain, and you're eating sausage, chips and beans in the cafe.
At a Premier Inn, yeah.
Do you see what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that, because we've all done it. But I hope that they're supporting these females realistically in what happens after F1 Academy. And as long as that is correct, then they're doing it for the right reasons. But I just hope that these women and females aren't getting to that category and thinking, this is it, I've made it. Then they come out the other end and they just flit away, and you never hear from them again. That's not productive, So it needs to have stability, consistency, and a longevity after that championship.
That's the problem. So you give these girls for 1 or 2 years this ridiculous, like, Formula One driver-esque lifestyle. You're seeing them on Vogue. You're seeing them, just Instagram's just exploding on different brand deals and flying in private jets, maybe, whatever it is. They live this crazy life. And they also, which I think is, again, very cool, they mix them in with the F1 boys a lot and have them in, interviews, doing social media content with them, which is great. But then, like you said, it's like dangling a sweet in front of a kid. and then just pulling it away from them, because that 2 years will end, or that 1 to 2 years, however long they're allowed in Formula One Academy. And then which it shouldn't do, feels like a downgrade going to race in GB3, which is, I don't think controversial to say, very competitive, more competitive than F1 Academy.
Of course.
You're with a mixed grid of boys and girls, some of them really quick. Abby Pulling, for example, got a podium last weekend, super talented driver. But what would you say is the right way to go about something like F1 Academy then?
I also want to, make a point that I obviously work in Formula One, so I see a lot of the races. I stand and I watch these F1 Academy races, and I am fully invested in it. I love when the racing is good. If anyone goes onto my Twitter account, I've always praised amazing races. I remember a couple of races last year at Abu Dhabi. The racing was brilliant, door to door, close, competitive, feisty. I love it. If females are being portrayed in the correct light, then I am all for it. And I do enjoy seeing females race and hold their own and put on a good show. But it's, as I always come back to, as long as the intention is pure, and we were saying about the drivers mixing with the F1 teams and they're doing all of this PR and media stuff, that's fine, as long as the data and the knowledge and the hard work is going on and they're learning from these F1 drivers and they're sitting in their data rooms and taking it all on board, so that when they leave, there's longevity to their career. Then I'm all for it. Like I've said before, with F1 Academy, I don't disagree in what they're doing, but I just hope that these females have a career beyond that championship and they're not just being utilised for those 2 years and then sent on their way with no real help. Susie does a great job and investing. She's at every round. She's hardworking. She's very straight talking. I've heard her talk to some of the girls, that are maybe struggling a little bit. She's quite firm with them, and she's come from that era where she didn't have any of this herself. And I'm an advocate for that side of it, but I just worry that it's being perceived as like we said, a media frenzy, a lovely lifestyle, but not actually teaching these current girls how to survive the industry after that season.
Do you think, which again is controversial, we spoke about with Abby, and she gave an interesting opinion on this, and the comments just exploded on our Instagram and TikTok clips. But obviously there's biological differences between a man and a woman. Do you think this makes a difference in motorsport and mixed racing? Both, I want touring cars and GT racing is different to F3 and F2. For context, Abby said women can do well up until about F4, maybe F3, and then it gets really physical in Formula One F3, so FIA F3 and F2. And she argued that F2, especially with no power steering, was unnecessarily difficult, because in F1 you do have power steering.
You almost need to go through a harder category to get to the easier category, if that makes sense.
And she saw that as a glass ceiling. Of like, if you take it away, if you add just a bit of power steering to F3 and F2 cars, that will entice more women who do have the money or do have the financial backing from sponsors or whatever to go in and race them. But her view was just that it's too physical as it is. Do you think that's a worthy comment? Yeah,
I think I would find it hard to comment on single seaters because I've never raced them. But speaking and being involved around your Abby Eatons, your Alice Powell's, Abby Pulling, Sarah, all that kind of female driver who have come from GT racing, Ginettas, whatever else we've done, and then gone into single seaters, they've actively said you do get to a level where the physicality changes. I do think it depends on the person. I'm built very differently to Jamie Chadwick or Abby Eaton. Me and Abby actually did a Tough Mudder event a long time ago. I hate the gym. I hate running, but I'm built a lot stronger than her. So it was clear on this Tough Mudder that she was quite easy to run between the obstacles. But when we got to the obstacles, I was much stronger than her and was able to do the obstacles, some of them better than she could. So I want to say that male, female is more of a gender in terms of realistically females are smaller, weaker, but there's obviously differences. I would like to say that I could probably hold my own differently to some other females just because of my build, my height, that kind of stuff. I do think in touring cars and GT racing, physically, no major difference.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't think the G-forces or the way the car is different. I've never found that with any teammates that I've had. Jess Hawkins raced a touring car. Don't remember her ever having anything physical that was different. I've even had male friends that have raced touring cars and by Sunday evening their arms are knackered. So male to female, men can get as tired just as females can in that sense. Single seaters, I do think there is a difference. And I do think there's work to be done in these feeder categories in terms of FIA F3 and FIA F2. Why does it need to be so different to F1 in terms of power steering? If it's a genuine feeder series, surely it should be getting closer and closer to what the top of the pyramid is. So if the thing that's holding females back and slighter built males, because I guarantee there are some males in this industry that struggle to do the power steering just as much as the females do because of their build and their strength. If that's holding these talented drivers back, then surely there should be some adaptation to help aim for the top of the pyramid, because that's essentially what we're getting to. And if these drivers get into F1 and go, that's a lot easier, and I put easier in terms of, it's never easy, but in terms of physicality, it is, then surely there should be a little bit of change to make that stepping stone more realistic. Let's not say easier, let's say more realistic to what they're aiming for. That's physical side. Mental side, I do think there's a difference male and female.
How so?
How so? Females, and this is a generalization, okay? I'm not speaking individually. I think generally my experience is that females tend to maybe overthink more. They maybe take different things on board differently, negatives. They maybe carry with them more, self-critical, anything like that. They deal with it differently to males. One thing I've always said, and it frustrates the hell out of me, is I'll get angry, and if I can't release my anger in a physical way, that comes out as cry. It then comes out as crying. Do you see what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
So that annoys me because I get angry if I can't punch something. Not. I don't mean another driver, but you see what I mean. Like you've always got anger. If you must have had races where you want to lash out at something. Slam a door, hit the steering wheel, do something. If my anger doesn't have that outlet, my female side kicks in and it turns into an emotional cry. And I've spoken to other females, and I'm probably putting myself on this, opening up to a point where, people might judge me for this. But
being honest.
I've always said to my teams, if I get out the car and I walk out the garage with my crash helmet on, don't try and stop me. All I'm doing is managing my own internal emotion, whether it's anger, frustration, whatever it is, because I know it's probably going to come out in a cry. So I'll remove myself, go and have that moment, and then come back and I'm completely fine. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people take emotion of that sense as a weakness, and they allocate that as a female. Oh, she's crying again. I can guarantee that most females get really frustrated that their emotion comes out in that way. But that's kind of just how we're sometimes built. Yeah. And I don't think any driver I've raced against will ever say that I'm overly emotional or I'm weak or anything like that. If anything, I'm feisty. Like your face then when I said about I want to punch something.
I was just imagining you keeping your helmet on, walking out the garage, and basically people scared you're going to punch them. Basically.
Yeah, but I've always had that personality where people are standoffish with me, or because I'm assertive or whatever it is. But I get to a point and then it comes out in tears and it winds me up because I wish it didn't. And that's where I think there's male-female differences. But I do think as a female, if you recognise your traits, you can then utilise them and feed them into a positive, as long as you understand them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm glad you've said that. And I think also I wouldn't worry about whether people judge you for that, because I actually think a majority of men and women that watch this will respect you for saying that, because it's actually the opposite of what a lot of women would at least not like to admit. They'd like to say, no, there's no differences, and I never cry, and not all women are more emotional than men, and whatever. Yeah. But I spoke to and I won't name her what team she's with, but a mechanic who's working with Formula One Academy. Yeah. And she engineered or mechanic for me on a Porsche weekend once. And she's come from, I don't want to say male racing, mixed racing. Yeah. And then gone to Formula One Academy. And she said, oh my God, the difference in how the girls deal with the amazing emotional highs and lows that happen in motorsport. By the way, we're like, as men as well, it is bloody frustrating and very sad sometimes. But she said the way they deal with it is worse, slightly like more dramatic than how men would. She basically said there's loads of crying. Bad qualifying, crying. And we've got to remember we're talking about 15 to 25-year-old girls that are in their first season. Also whacked on this from usually not from nothing, but maybe from GB4 or F4, where there's crowds and stuff, but no one cares too much about you, to be quite frank. And then you go to F1 Academy and all of a sudden you've got all this media attention and you think the world's encompassing you. So yeah, I'm glad that's kind of like an open conversation.
I think it comes back to this whole not leaning on it. I think you can't have an overly emotional driver regardless of your gender. It's channeling how you deal with it. So I recognized how I dealt with it. So I managed how I was seen dealing with it, if that makes sense. So I didn't, when I was younger, I would allow it to come out in that anger form, slamming doors, punching the roof of your car before you get out, shouting, screaming. But when you get to touring cars or higher levels, you can't do that because there's people watching, sponsors watching, there's TV cameras. So all of a sudden I'm now self-combusting because I can't release that energy. So I had to reset how I did it. So that was helmet on, through the garage, go and, shout and scream in my own motorhome, do whatever I need to do, and then come back composed and normal. So again, I don't think we should allow the crying and over emotion and throwing tantrums to be okay, because you need to control and manage your emotion in a productive way. However, I do think we need to assess and accept that people deal with it in a different way and then work on that program with them. Does that make sense? So if you realise that F1 Academy has that roller coaster of emotion differently to men, then bring in a program that helps those females manage that emotion on those race weekends. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, all the way down to karting, I suppose, because karting's a relentless space as well.
And if you think about when you look at Bambino kids or Minimax kids, they actually all respond in the same emotional way across the grid, male, female, because they're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. They're not emotionally developed. So their reactions to it, whether they've been taken out, hit off, they cry or they throw a tantrum. And then when we hit puberty, male and females go a different direction. So if we're in this high pressured environment, give the females and the males a way in which they can manage the way they deal with heightened emotion so that it comes out in a beneficial way to them rather than just allowing, judgment to be thrown on them. Don't stick a camera in a driver's face that's angry or upset because it's negative. Instead of putting it on a pedestal and put it on a media side, the championship or the initiative needs to help fix them and understand why they're reacting that way, and because they're so young, help them so that again when they move on from F1 Academy or whatever it is, they know how to survive in mainstream motorsport.
Do you think part of a problem, which is a question I haven't really thought about / asked before, with something like F1 Academy is I think the answer is yes. I wonder how many of the girls on the grid are, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, more into the image of being in this glitz, glam, superstar lifestyle than they are die-hard crazy about racing. So when I speak to you and when I speak to Louise and when I speak to Abby, I see, I fucking love racing.
Yeah.
It is it runs in my blood. I've been around it since I was young and I want to be the best, not best female. I want to be the absolute best at what I do. And I love motorsport. I can't say I see the same in not the whole grid. I'm not generalizing the whole the F1 Academy grid, but maybe it was similar with W Series where they're more enticed by the fame that comes with it and the lifestyle that comes with it than the actual sport. Do you think that's got any?
Yeah, I think that can also be taken to any championship. So it depends how these drivers have to fund their season, I think. Don't get me wrong, I think there's in every championship, and we see it in club racing and higher levels, there's the driver that races the high brand manufacturer car, big fish, small pond championship, so they can go out and win, and they go to the pub at the end of the weekend and go, I won 3 out of 3 races. Well, of course you did. Your car was 200 horsepower more than anyone else's. Do you see what I mean? So there's always going to be these drivers that are keen to just be a racing driver, and they wear their race boots home after a track day and walk into the petrol station. Do you know what I mean? That stereotype of doing it. However, you could argue that drivers on the grids that I've raced with could say that I don't take it seriously because I'm always interacting with fans and I'm always on social media and I'm always doing these media things. But that's how I had to raise money and survive the financial side of it. And I think we have to bear that in mind. Bianca Bustamante, for example, she wants to be a racing driver. She's racing year in, year out, but she's got a high level social media, activation. And to keep it at that level, you've got to be on it all the time. So you can't speak for the driver, but from the outside looking in, I see how you got to that point. But I think it will all come down to how they're funding their season. Because did I want to be flat out on social media on a race weekend and interact with everyone? Not necessarily. Sometimes I just wanted to be a racing driver and just focus on that. But I wouldn't have gone racing without that side of it. So you've got to balance it, I think. And it depends, because if someone could say to me, you can go touring car racing again now, fully funded, and you don't have to do all of the faff that goes with it, sign me up. Because it took away from the hard work I do on that weekend, but it was part of my weekend, because otherwise I couldn't be on the grid at all. So there's probably a balance, but you can see with, the way Abby Pullen rocks up with her hair all over the place, no makeup on, shorts and t-shirt, sports kit. She's not there for the show. She's there for the racing. But that is how her sponsors are happy for her to be, and ask for her to be, and that works for her. But other drivers, it might be slightly different.
Yeah. Going back to your career, by the way, reaching British touring cars is an incredible achievement. That you reached. Okay. Just
financially in itself, yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll get on to that, because we spoke to Louise Goodman that came on, and she clearly said that is the job of raising these funds to get onto the grid. Does anyone earn a salary out of, you have to raise so much money?
Yeah.
How does someone earn a living from it?
So very few do. Let's say when I raced, it was a grid of 30. I would say that 95% of those drivers are paying full budget. There will be a handful of drivers that are maybe have earned over the amount of sponsorship that they need, and then take a salary from the sponsorship side of things. And then a much, much smaller percentage would be paid by either team or manufacturer. So British touring cars is not a financial career move. You don't go there thinking, if I win the championship, I'm then become a paid driver. In GTs, you start off as a pro with an AM that will either pay for your racing or even pay you a bit of a salary or pay you a day rate to be there. You then could maybe get into manufacturers, and then you become a professional graded driver. And you guys probably know it better than I do what it's like, and I know that grading's always argued and doesn't necessarily help along the way, but essentially in GT racing you could make a salary. It's a job. You're a Mercedes driver, Aston driver, whatever, and you get placed in cars. In touring cars it's not like that. For example, Colin Turkington won the championship for BMW and WSR. The next season he didn't race because he didn't earn enough, or didn't raise enough funds to go racing. So you start from zero every time. Having said that, there are some drivers that can make a salary from it, but it's not something that is mainstream. It is a deal personal to them, personal to that team, personal to that sponsor. It is not, if you make it to Ford and Napa, you're going to be paid. No, it depends how you do that deal with that team and that driver. So yeah, you don't go there to earn money. You definitely go there to spend money.
What to give us an idea and our viewers an idea, I know it ranges per team, but how much money do you have to bring to a team as a normal driver to a British touring car for a touring car season? So
again, in my 3 seasons, you would range anywhere between, say, 250 grand to 650 grand, depending what team, what car. That then depends on whether damage is included, damage isn't included. Are you insured, not insured? Again, every deal is completely bespoke to that team and that driver. But I know that drivers were paying 650, standard amount, plus damage on top of that. So God knows, depending on what the deal is. Some teams will have anything cosmetic we'll look after, anything structural or engine or gearbox is maybe your problem. But every deal's bespoke. But you won't get a seat now probably for less than 350 grand. And if you're doing that, it's probably one of the lower level teams on the grid. So it's going up each year.
So like a small 2-bedroom house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every year.
Well, in the UK anyway.
In the
Yeah,
UK.
exactly. And then it doesn't roll over to next season. You know, you don't win every single race of the championship and go, oh, there's a free entry or there's a, help towards it. You start again from zero. When it's January the 1st, you now got to find another 350 to 650 grand to go racing.
I mean, for me personally, it starts, we've already, for the first time, basically, I say secured, been in conversations all year this year about next year.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be that early, because my God, it's refreshing to have a deal signed up by September of the year before, and then it's going to be announced in Jan, and you don't, you can just focus your whole time on training, and that leads on nicely to our next question, which for me is, if you could have had the golden ticket and someone come along and say, Jade, I'm going to give you whatever it is, £1 million, you can take a 200k wage from it. I'm going to manage everything to do with any other sponsor you have. And I'm going to put you in full-time simulator training and give you a shitload of testing.
Yeah.
What do you think you could have achieved?
I am very realistic in my ability and my career. I don't think I am naturally talented in terms of, some of these drivers jumping anything and they're on the pace with everything they get into. However, I'm not shit. Do you know what I mean?
That's useful.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
That's good.
I'm not one of these drivers that you sit next to and go what on earth are they doing? How have they ever got there? If we break down my touring car, fastest laps, people judge me for being 8 or 9 tenths off on a 30 car grid. If you break that lap down to corner, and the one story example I always use is Brands GP, which is, you don't get a lot of track time there. You either race there or get the very rare track day or test day, but generally you don't coach around there much. You don't have much track time out the back. Josh Cook, who is a race winner in British touring cars, has fought for championships there. And Jason Plato were my 2 teammates at the time. We don't need to explain who Jason Plato is, very successful touring car driver. When we overlapped my data with theirs, I was up to or less than a tenth off them at every single corner. But there's 13 or 14 or whatever corners there is. So that then all adds up, and that is the deficit over the lap. So I know that if I'd had full funding and full focus on just being a driver, I feel my results would have been more top 10s, some reverse grids, some, on my day driver. Do you see what I mean? I don't think I would have been the Josh Cooks, the Ash Suttons, the Turkingtons necessarily, but I would have been the on my day driver. You work hard over the 3 races, you get a reverse grid pole and you get a win from it. There's other drivers that I believe I am better than that have had those successes, but I've just not necessarily had the time or the effort, the money to have it. Little things that people don't realise is I'd pull out into the pit lane, they'd line us all up, and I'd say on the radio, what brakes have I got on? And they'd go, Josh's. And you're like, cool.
Yeah.
But all our cars look the same.
Secondhand.
Do you see what I mean? That the outside crowd see 3 cars liveried up the same on the same race, but they don't know that Josh has got new brakes on and I've got his from FP2 or FP1. That's the difference that money brings and that kind of stuff. And I'm not leaning on it. It is what it is. I'm so grateful for the years that I got, and lots of people put money in and supported me and funded me. But there is a backstory to some of the deficits between lap times, and that's what I want to encourage people to just not sit and judge on face value and actually allow there to be a story behind it. Had I had new brakes on every time and new tyres on every time, would I have been P1? No. And I'm happy to admit that. But on my day, with the right equipment, I think I can hold my own and drive door to door with the big names in that championship. Yeah, I do believe that.
I think there's so much that goes on behind the scenes on a car that, like you said, can be old. They all look the same.
Yeah.
That like we had it this year where we struggled at Spa, and it turns out we needed to change the intercoolers or whatever. We were so slow. I mean, my teammate's the Porsche Junior, and he was leading the championship at the start of the year, and we're 19th and 21st in qualifying.
Yeah.
And we're just like, you know, to the outside world, your sponsor asks you, oh, how was Spa? How was quali? So I didn't get to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's P21.
Yeah. How do you explain that? You know why.
Yeah.
Your team knows why.
But then when you do explain it, it just sounds like a bunch of excuses.
Exactly that. And that's the emotional management of it. That's the roller coaster that people don't necessarily see that we're dealing with on a day-to-day. If no one was watching and you qualified 20th, if you know why, you'll sleep peacefully that night. No problem. I know why. It's not me. It was this. That's the backstory. But you've got to answer to however many people that stood behind you and get them to believe the backstory. And that's the hardship of motorsport, is that we're not a driver that's just a driver. We're a driver that's sponsor backed, and you've got people to answer to all the time.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask, on this incredible emotional roller coaster of you getting into British touring cars, was there ever a day where you thought, I can't do this anymore?
Yes. And it is when qualifying. I'll admit I struggle with that fierce one lap pace. Qualifying in touring cars is such a short session. So many cars on track. Like I say, when I was doing it, it was 30 cars. So you take a sort of Brands Indy and you're all trying to put a lap in. For me, the hardship was, what took its toll was I let the outside noise become too overpowering for my internal monologue. So when I was qualifying or racing and I would get I deemed a bad result, my instant stress would come from external pressure, external judgment. And I'll admit that I let that become too much of my own thought process. I needed to focus on what I was doing. And like I was just saying to you, if you know why it was that position, then that's all that matters. Do you see what I mean? But for me, it was so competitive. You're looking for half a tenth, 2 tenths, and that could move you 2 or 3 places up the grid. For me, if it was just driving that touring car, I absolutely bloody loved driving the car. And I still now, when I hear them drive out and I hear them going up the sequential gearbox, and I miss it. I really miss that getting in, being a racing driver, grabbing hold of a car and really ragging its neck as best you can. But for me, it became a point where when I wasn't getting the results I felt I should get, the low points became a lot lower than the high points, if that made sense. So there were times where I'd think, why am I doing this? Yeah. But what motorsport does, and you'll know this, is you then get a really good result, a little spark of hope, and it reels you back in. And I kind of explain it like if you have got a narcissistic parent, right, and you spend your whole childhood like getting attention, please see me, look at me, give me attention, then they give you a little bit and you're like, all is good in the world again, I'll keep doing it. And then you go back to the people say it's 90% negative and 10% positive. That little positive is such a high and such a buzz that it lures you straight back in, and you're like, this is why I do it. But you've got to trawl through that hardship every single time just to get that one little spark of happiness. But we're all addicted and we all do it year in, year out, which is just mad.
Yeah, we're all basically gambling addicts.
Yeah. We've just channeled our addiction into something else other than drugs, drink or gambling, haven't we?
I mean, it's a better way to do it. But on that topic of external pressure, can you give us more context as to what that looked like?
Knobheads online that just judge you. External pressure comes from, I think, various different places. One of them I found that because I was following in the footsteps of my dad that actually, won the Clio Cup, and when he raced in touring cars, he got some podiums in touring cars and stuff. There's an external pressure of, internal pressure of my surname and wanting to live up to what my family have already achieved. That's internal, but I can manage that. That's fine. External pressure, I think, came from online judgment. And looking back now that I've been out of it for a couple of years, I wish I didn't pay so much attention to it or let it get to me. Because I was social media driven, a lot of my sponsorship came through social media. I had to be active on it. And as we spoke about previously, I didn't have a manager. I didn't have social media help, anything. So I had to be on it. And the hardest thing I found is you would have a qualifying day, 3 sessions in the car, FP1, you do your housework, you scrub your tyres, you do whatever, you work towards qualifying. However qualifying went, I then had to go back to my motorhome 6 o'clock in the evening and put a post up. When you do a post, you then get drawn into comments and, you know, whatever it is. And then you go to bed, you'll know you could get 20 positive comments. But if you get one nasty negative comment, that's the one that plays on your mind. And when I first went into touring cars, I was mentally strong and I was brushing it off and it was fine. But as the years went on, because I wasn't ever getting the results that were making them happy, the negatives became more and more. And then it's like if you look in the mirror every day and you tell yourself you're ugly, you're fat, they became my mirror. Do you see what I mean? They became my internal monologue. So unfortunately, what was starting to happen is when I got a bad result, my internal fear was, oh no, I'm now going to get absolutely slagged off online. Looking back now, why did I care about what they thought sat on their sofa?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because people comment, middle-aged fat bloke who's done nothing in his life behind a blank profile.
Judging me for being 3/10 off my
and
teammate.
They're commenting, what a loser, sat on their sofa, you know, Stella in hand. It's like...
And I always played with them a bit, you know, most of the time I'd ignore it, but I am sarcastic. That's my favourite style of humour. And so I always had this sort of rule where I never swore at them and I never got personal with them, but I would try and belittle them a little bit. And I'd go back and like ask them if they wanted a hug or like, are you okay? Or, you know, use kiss emojis and like, you know, all this kind of stuff, or imply that they might, you know, be at home wanking into a sock or something like that, you know, that kind of lifestyle. But in the moment, it was hard to just constantly have this backlash of negatives. And again, that's a personality trait where I shouldn't have let it succumb to me too much, but unfortunately it did. And that was probably my negative experience of British touring cars, because what was funny is that actually at the track, I didn't have any negative, fans were always nice, drivers were respectful, you know, some of them you like, some of them you don't. That's just nature of it.
Well, you know what?
But it was all right.
If you bumped into anyone that had commented,
correct,
Jade is shit, whatever, crashes, whatever. If you bumped into them at the track, they'd be, oh, Jade, can I have an autograph?
I've actually just reminded me, do you know I rang one of them up once?
No, how did you get his number?
Best day of my life. So I was sat at work and... obviously not working very hard because I'm sat there, and there was this guy that was just constantly commenting, and it's negative, and I sent a sarcastic comment back, and fine, and it wasn't really bothering me, but I was just sat there, and then another comment, and then it switched to messaging. He direct messaged me something, and this was a couple of years ago now, so I don't really remember the details, but I thought, right, sod ya, going through your page, and it said CEO or MD of whatever company.
No way.
Click that. I found out that, well, you know, who he was. I looked at the number, and the number was directly correlated with him. So I was like, brilliant, let's do that. So then I got home and I thought, let's just ring him. So I put my phone, 141 or whatever it is, so your number doesn't come up. So I thought, I don't need him
no
having my
ID.
Number. And I rang this number and it answered, hello. Can you imagine how he sounds?
CEO.
You know? Yeah. And I went, oh, hi, is this so-and-so? Yes, it is. Who's speaking? I went, oh, hello, it's Jade Edwards here. I thought we could discuss the comments you've been making all day. And I honestly, through the phone, heard his stomach fall straight out of his arse. And just in that moment, it made my entire season. That was my favourite moment. And he put the phone down.
Immediately
put the phone down. So I rang him back because I thought, I'm now like full adrenaline. This is amazing.
What's his
Dopamine
address?
hit through the roof. Yeah, like loving this. And he put the phone down. He blocked me straight away, so I couldn't ring him back. And I think I messaged him and said, if you're not brave enough to answer the phone to me, I would probably consider what you're writing about me online. And he just replied something like, I think you need to put your focus more into driving faster than like harassing me. And I thought,
my
rich
God.
coming from him or whatever. And he's blocked me on everything or whatever. But
what's his name?
yeah, exactly. Put a tagline here on the camera. But I love that moment because that sums them all up. As soon as you confront it, they absolutely shit themselves or backtrack. And I hate the fact that I gave so much of my internal thought or worry or stress to those people. And I think if I ever got the opportunity to race in touring cars now, I would do it quite differently. I would eliminate that side of it. I'd probably give someone else my phone for the weekend, you know, whatever. And I'll just focus on the bits that I enjoy because I don't need that crap from people that don't know the story. They don't get it. And if I want to raise £300,000 and finish last in every touring car race, then I will bloody well do that. Do you know what I mean? Because it's my prerogative. I've deserved to be there because I found the money. Thankfully, I didn't finish last in every race, so I can go home with that. But I do feel like there's some unfinished business there. I would love to go and do another season fully funded without the external noise and actually just enjoy racing in British touring cars. So, yeah, one day maybe it'll happen. But if not, you know, at least I did it. At least I did it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got some friends who race in it, right? How good are the drivers in that championship, from your opinion?
I think people underestimate the style of touring car racing. How good are they as drivers? I don't know, because how many of them, you know, go off and do other elements of driving. GT racing, yeah, most of them hold their own. Johnny Adams gone on, been very successful. He was a touring car driver. You know, plenty of other touring car drivers go off and do GT racing and do well. I think what people underestimate when they come into British touring cars is that, again, it's that whole, what they think contact is. And they think, oh, it's just a driver's alongside you, I'm just going to door them. It's not that. If you watch the top 5 or 6 drivers, the contact 9 times out of 10 is very calculated and very methodical, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's things like side drafts that people don't realise about. There's, you know, we call it cue balling. You know, you tap the car ahead, which obviously creates a concertina effect, and then you know, and then the stewards have to get on top of that because they recognise what we're doing, and you know, it's all about playing the game in touring cars. If you have a reverse grid, or for example, I always had the mentality that if I was where I was on the grid, and Tom Ingram, Sutton, Cook, Turkington, all these names have had a DNF and now at the back, why am I holding them up? Why am I defending against them in P19 or P14? Let them go and use them as you know, and that's the difference of where I was on the grid, where people go, touring cars is all about holding your ground and defending, and I'd be sat there going like, why don't we all work together and then we can catch the next group of drivers? Because who wants to fight over 16th? You know, none of us. No one's here to try and be 16th. We're all here to try and be further up. But how these drivers go from the back of the grid to the front is because they know how to manage the contact, the driving, the openings of position, that kind of stuff. And it is a real difference in learning your trade. And you find that the drivers that come in quite bolshy and think they're Jack the Lad and start hitting everyone quite quickly find themselves in a hedge because you've got to earn your stripes in that kind of championship. And I know drivers this year that have come in and gone, oh, I'm going to show everyone I'm going to drive really touring car-esque. And actually all they're doing is driving into people. That gets tiring. And then the big names, tactically, see them off the track, push them wide, door them, elbow them, but not to the point where they're like, you know, doing it aggressively and damaging their car massively. It's just getting them out of the way. Till you've earned your position, get back, little boy, or get back, you know. Do you know what I mean? There's a characteristic there, earning your stripes, learning the trade. And once you're at that point and you earn a respect from the drivers, then you can drive door to door, elbows out, and everyone drives. You know, you watch the top lads. It's it's you know
I think they're incredibly good. I was watching at turn 1 at Paddock Hill, Brands Hatch.
Yeah.
Tom Ingram, he put on a magical move on Jake Hill.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
But it 9 times out of 10, a move has been made, or you know from racing, a move's made 2 or 3 corners prior to that, or 2 or 3 laps, because he's watched what Jake does on that corner and sees where his car's weaker or his car's stronger, and goes, right, well, I know that in sector 1 I'm better, so I need to tee up and move in. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not just, they're not just getting to the corner and going, oh, there's a gap, go. They've almost thought about it way before that moment. Yeah, exactly.
I love watching. One of the drivers is my favourite to watch, especially if he's got an onboard, especially if he's been rolled up with a bad quali or like the race before's gone bad and he's starting near the back's Ash Sutton.
Yeah.
Because he you can see with everything he does, like you said, calculated contact.
Yeah.
I think he might be one of the best for that.
Yeah.
Magic.
Just light taps here and there, setting up moves like 3 or 4 corners before.
Yeah.
Just all over their mirrors like a madman. But he never, very, very, very rarely ever makes a mistake in terms of just smashing someone off the track. And also,
you don't see their cars come in with bits like fully hanging off, you know, like you said, calculated like contact. It is a non-contact championship, we know that, but because we're in touring cars, we can use it to our advantage, and you know that you can have a lunge down the inside and have a bit of contact, and it's not malicious, it's not, you know, don't go to the stewards for it. But yeah, he's a sort of driver. There's all of them that are able to get from the back to the front without really a mark on their car, because they know how to manage the traffic and manage the drivers. But one thing I would absolutely love to see, I don't know if any of you remember, there was a year in MGs a few years ago now where Ash Sutton and Josh Cook were teammates, and they were fairly new to the championship, but they were both very evenly matched. And I think, you know, they pushed each other along. Ash has gone his way, won multiple championships, and Josh has gone a different way. But again, he's very competitive, very good. When you see them on track, they know each other so well from that teammate era that the driving's completely different. They're both feisty. They're both very logical thinkers. They're both very talented drivers. I would love to see those two in a championship battle, because it's like, I refer to it as whenever I raced my sister on track, the characteristics of our car changed as soon as we got to each other.
Yeah.
My dad would see it. He'd go like, you both battling whoever else it was. As soon as you got to each other, you became stubborn, and like there's the fierceness of not wanting to let that person beat you was stronger. And there's something between those two that they have like this internal rivalry that I would love to see that go to the wire, because it'd be like a Plato Matt Neal type fierceness, I think. So hopefully next year or whenever, those two get a car that are equally as good and they can just go door to door, because it'd be entertaining.
I remember watching, I think it was 2 years ago at like finale in Brands Hatch, and Ash and Cook were side by side for like 3 laps. What I noticed was obviously they really wanted to get one over on each other and not let each other pass. But there was also more respect than there was for other drivers. There was no, they went side by side through multiple corners, and Ash just left enough room for him to stay there, and vice versa. So I think,
and that comes from them knowing each other's style so well as well. They knew, you know, speaking to both of them, they knew around the lap what each other was going to do. And I think it came into the final corner, they were completely side by side towards the flag, and it was that side draft that basically created whoever won. And I've actually got, I mean, you're not meant to do this, but I took a selfie on the pit wall, and I've got me with the 2 cars crossing the line at the checker flag, because I was in Clio's at the time, and I was watching them as 2 mates racing, and I've got that moment where they cross the line. But it's exactly that. That would be what would happen over a season. It would be door to door, but in a hugely respectful way, and that's what I think creates good racing, because it was the same with Plato and Matt Neal. Okay, it bubbled over every now and again, but generally it was just top quality touring car racing throughout their entire career. So I'd love it to go back to that sort of racing.
if you had to put your money on someone, who do you think the most impressive person on the touring car grid is?
The thing is, I don't want to be nice to them because I know them all too well. You know what I mean? But it's hard to say, because I wouldn't say that there's like one. There's like every few years there's an era of driver that comes through, but it's all car related as well. You know, when Ash was winning his championships, he's a fantastic driver, but he also had a brilliant car. Also credit to him for developing that car and creating it. So by him saying he has a brilliant car doesn't take anything necessarily away from him, because he would have helped do that. Ingram this year, for example, has got a fantastic car underneath him, but he's still got to pedal it. He's still got to drive it. So he's brilliant. I do think Josh Cook is one of those drivers that's never quite had the equipment that he deserves to be up there with them. He's fought for some championships, but always just missed out. There's that sort of group of driver that I think is always cream rises to the top. You know, whatever car you put them in and whatever team, they would always drag a result out of it. You know, Jake Hill this year is really having to drag that BMW round, but he's managed to score good points and score good podiums. And I think no matter those 4 or 5 drivers, you could put them in any car on the grid and they would drag brilliant results out of them. So it'd be hard to pinpoint one, but I would love to see those 4 or 5 drivers in equal-ish machinery and going hell for leather to win a championship.
Who do you fear the most to race against?
I don't really fear anyone. It's the same as your driver to driver.
Yeah.
You have to have that mentality where they're just another name on the car. I actually feared more the midfield drivers than you do the top drivers, because the top drivers drive in a way you expect, whereas the midfield drivers, if I ever had contact, I could name you 3 or 4 drivers every single time. I could tell you who it was. Name them, name and shame. And 9 times out of 10, it was them, you know? So, but you guys probably have a similar thing, is wherever you feel you've been hit off, you can normally name who it is. And I always had an experience where I did a small amount of GT racing in British GT, and our car had an issue. So I got sent out in an AM session, the bronze session. That was bloody terrifying because they drive so differently to what we've known growing up, if you know what I mean. And I went out thinking, it's bronze, this will be all right. And I went out thinking, I'm going to end up doing more damage to the car than a normal session, because they drive slightly differently. So fearing of a driver's not probably the case. I'm aware of certain drivers more than others, and you fight certain drivers differently than others. But you always knew who the big names were on the grid. You knew them around you. But I actually knew the stronger names would pass me or race me cleanly than maybe the other names that I'm day-to-day racing with all the time. So, different characteristics, as I'm sure you both know.
Yeah, actually, I relate. I went in an AM session. Was it an AM session once? I think maybe it was just testing, but there was one amateur that fast-tracked their racing straight to British GT, and they were like 10 seconds off me.
10 seconds.
I swear I almost crashed so hard into this guy because it was just so the closing speed was unbelievable. But anyway, final question from me. You now work for ITV. Great presenting role. Who also Louise Goodman complimented you on as well.
Said you're annoyingly good.
So she gets really annoyed because she likes to do notes and research, and she works really hard, and I'm that annoying like ADHD school kid that rocks in with not a single piece of paper or a pen and just blags my way through the day. It'll catch up with me one time, I'm sure. But at the moment, I'm blagging my way through it. But I think because my topic is so known to me that it's all right. But we've got very different ways of doing it. But she's someone that I definitely learn a lot off of, and she's brilliant in what she's done. Yeah,
I mean, you're working with legends recently, Steve Ryder, Paul O'Neill. They're like proper motorsport legends. So what I was going to ask is, you talked about the championship rivals these guys go up against each other with, and maybe someone that watches British touring cars tunes into you, give someone an idea behind the scenes, the level of work ethic when it comes to setup of the car. Like, what are these drivers doing to try and beat each other on track with their machinery alone? Give someone an idea.
So with touring cars, there's a lot of the cars, regardless of how they look, that are the same. Things like subframe, suspension, whatever. We're essentially using all of the same items, but it's knowing how to utilize those items. So what I always lacked was an understanding of engineering. So I was able to come in and say, it's doing this at that corner and doing that at that corner, but I couldn't say what I wanted to change to make it how I needed it, which I get is the role of an engineer. But the drivers that are brilliant are the ones that have that pure engineering understanding as well, because we only have 30, 40 minutes in a test session. So you don't actually have that much track time to figure out your setup and your car. So they were able to come in and go, it's doing this, put 2 clicks on there, take this off, do whatever. Wow. They have that understanding with their engineer slightly more than, say, myself did, where I'd have to solely rely on my engineer being good at their job. And if you've got an engineer that's new or hasn't been in it for a decade or is new to that car, he's learning, or they're learning just as much as I am. So the difference again, and that's why I credited, when I said Ash and Ingram have got these great cars, some of the credit goes to them for that in itself, because they know how to develop it. They know how a touring car should be at all these tracks. And that comes from having their bum in that seat year after year after year, and also putting in the work to know the engineering side of it as well. Data reading, they don't just look at a data screen and go, I'm braking, 10 meters too early. it might be they're braking 10 meters too early because of another factor that doesn't show up on the data, and they've got that capacity to look deeper into not just looking at a 2D braking zone. They go, well, why can't I brake that late? Have I got old brakes on? Something else hindering me that is eliminating that factor. And that's what makes the difference. I always remember when Ash, I think, fought for one of his championships, there was a red flag and the camera went to him and he's got his notepad like in the car with him and he's reading through his bullet points and his notes. That's the difference between a driver that just rocks up and drives through the seat of their pants and one that has the natural ability but also backs it up with homework and research and the stuff you do away from the circuit as well. So, it's an intense championship. It's 10 weekends. You wake up on a Saturday, you've got 3 sessions and 3 races on a Sunday. You've got an hour and a half between each races. Any damage has got to be fixed. Any data's got to be looked at. You've got to find lunch. You've got to do media. Sponsors, Q&As, that kind of stuff. It's intense, and you've got to have that physical management and make sure you're doing the work behind the scenes, but also the mental capacity to deal with it as well. So it's every driver that I've known's come into it has been surprised by how intense the bubble of British touring cars is.
Wow.
It's a big thing we looked into with John about talking about driver performance, what separates the goods from the great. And he said, with his coaching style and the best drivers, they don't just look at what am I doing wrong? It's why am I doing it wrong? It's not, I need to brake 3 or 4 meters later there, or my apex speed on this lap came a bit too early or a bit too late. That's why I'm a tenth off at that corner. It's why is that? What's happening in my head approaching that corner?
Yeah.
Am I overthinking it? Do I have a braking point? Do I need a braking point? Am I looking far enough into the apex? Really not just looking at, I did that wrong, I need to do this, but why do I need to do this? And what was wrong with that? And why was it wrong?
So
do you know what I mean?
One thing I was always taught in when I got to sort of touring car level and Clio Cup level, when I had drivers and coaches around me that were able to help me develop, we almost worked from pick up power backwards. So I would be told you need to be on the power flat out, or half power at this point. And if you're not, you need to work backwards from that as to why. And it's like you say, and it's quite easy to go, you need to be on the power there. But a driver comes in and goes, I can't, I've got understeer. But are you understeering because you've braked too late and carried too much speed in, and therefore you're forcing the understeer? So it's learning you as a driver. One thing that used to wind me up was I was always a late braker. I'm brave on the brakes, but that's not always fast, especially in front wheel drive stuff. And I remember my dad, and you never listen to your dad as a driver because, it's a close relationship. And I was at Croft in Clio's and I was getting frustrated. And the more I'd get frustrated, the more I overdrove. And he leant in the car and he said, just humour me. He said, just do a couple of laps how I want you to do it. And he said, go out and brake a car lengths earlier than you want to. Just cruise around, just drive, and wherever you want to brake, just humour me and brake earlier. And the bastard dash went green, 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 And it's that kind of understanding where you as a driver know what you need to do, but you sometimes need that external eyes to put it into coach you. And that's why even drivers at F1 level, touring car level, high GT level, still have eyes around them that are keeping them accountable for how they should be driving and not just driving to what I'm brave enough to brake there. Cool, but the car doesn't like it. It's not fast for the car, so you need to drive to that level. And that's where I think, again, the top tier drivers are able to self-coach themselves and go, well, if I know I need to be on the power at that point and I can't be, is it the car that's stopping me? Is it me? Do I need to change this or that? And they're able to articulate that factor, whereas maybe the lesser drivers just get frustrated and go, I can't do it, and don't look beyond that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's, I think we can,
we've got the BBC.
We forgot about the BBC.
Steve didn't get on the BBC. Where is it?
Have you heard of the BBC?
Do you want to have a go on it?
Well,
Jade, right. Jade, can you, our lovely assistant, can you get us the BBC? It's a bop it, by the way. We're not about to give you a dildo.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only BBC I know is...
So it's the Backseat Drivers Bop It Challenge.
Oh, no, I hate stuff like this.
So there is a leaderboard. Currently, someone Oliver James Webb, is
P1. Of course,
He's just good looking, talented at everything, obviously.
He's got 69.
He got 69
Yeah.
on
Of
it.
course he has.
So
Don't think I've ever done. This is the small version of a Bop It, no?
Yeah.
the small BBC, yeah. There are bigger ones you can get, but we've got that one.
Yeah.
So you get like an FP, and then
Right.
you go straight into a one-shot quali. So you get a practice run where
Yeah.
we sit here awkwardly and watch you, and then you get your quali, and that's it. Even if you fail on the first hurdle.
Okay, cool.
There's just a few functions on it. Twist it, pull it, or push it.
So, and the push it is the Bop
Yeah.
It thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go.
The pull is a bit sticky sometimes. Just be careful.
Oh.
It's sticky.
What's Jade been doing to it?
But this is my practice. What if my practice is better than the?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Same as real life.
You've got
There you
to
go.
perform under pressure.
Yeah, it's a bit.
Okay,
You might
fine.
want to give the.
Yeah, it needs to
Yeah, that'll do it.
kiss its neck. Right, do I go again?
Yeah, go again. The worst
Okay,
score we've
ready.
had. You don't have to do it to the rhythm, by the way. Just do it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, but maybe the rhythm is how I would.
Okay,
That's fine.
Alright.
You do you.
You find your rhythm. I think the worst is like 2 or 3. So
Really?
Yeah.
Who got 2 or 3?
Joseph Loke
Okay.
drove an
we
F1
need to
car
pull it
literally just
again.
before he did it as well.
There you go. Here we go. All right, we'll shut up. She's loving this. Pinnacle of her career. Oh. Oh.
Twist that shit.
She's more delicate than I thought she'd be. Oh, what is it? That's not bad. That's not
great.
bad. Well done,
That's
Jade.
addictive though, because now I already want to do it again now.
You
that's
have
the
to
thing.
come back.
That's
the thing with the
you have to
BBC.
come back another time.
Yeah,
That's
fair
the thing
enough.
with that thing. Yeah, no one wants to put it down. Right, last question
Yes.
from me after your BBC challenge, which I'm sure is the pinnacle of your career.
Of course,
you never
yeah.
thought you'd be here playing around with that thing, sat opposite us.
Yeah.
But if you could go back and give, let's say with you, I'd usually say a younger self, like your 8, 10, 12-year-old Jade.
Yeah.
But let's do it more from what you've said.
Yeah.
What would you tell yourself now as advice back in your first year in touring cars?
It would all be down to giving less of a shit what other people thought and just racing for me and my own results. Yeah, because I mean, I'm going to give a long answer, but essentially I think there were times I was really proud of what I achieved, times where I was annoyed at myself, but essentially the overriding negative is just the outside noise. So if I was to go back and do it again, I would make different measures to keep that external noise a lot quieter.
Nice. And that goes for every industry, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so,
Whatever
yeah.
you pursue.
Learning how to manage the judgment, I guess, from people that have absolutely nothing to do with your day-to-day success.
Perfect.
Very good.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jade.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a really interesting
Yeah,
podcast.
honestly, one of my favourites actually, Jamie.
Yeah, same.
Thank you. I'm sure you say it to everyone.
Actually, we don't,
No,
don't say that. do we?
no.
Amazing.
And I haven't interrupted too much.
No,
No.
It's all
I'm
good.
good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jade.
Appreciate it.